Welcome to the Movie Vault. I'm Ben.
And I'm Zach.
Zach, in order to be a good podcaster, you have to have two things.
Zach,
you got to have brains and you got to have balls. And you have too much of one and not enough of the other. You have too much brains, of course.
Not enough balls.
Not enough balls.
Okay. And do you balance me out, or is that...
No, I don't know that I balance you out at all.
Okay.
I'm critiquing you here.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with me.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you're a great podcaster because you have both.
Thank you. Well, today, as you might have guessed from that quote, we're covering, or you just read the title of the podcast, we're covering the 1986 motion picture directed by Martin Scorsese, written by Robert Price, and starring Paul Newman.
Richard Price.
I'm maybe getting confused with Paul Schrader. Starring Paul Newman and Tom Cruise is The Color of Money. It is also based on a book by, Walter Tevis, I believe?
Yep.
Yes, who wrote The Hustler. And in 1984, he wrote The Color of Money. It was his last novel before his death. And it's always interesting when this happens. Another movie I can think of that's like this is No Country for Old Men, where like the book is written and then the movie is made like almost immediately after the book is written, and you're like, were they already selling the rights to the book before it was even like finished? Of course, I assume there's like a time period for publishing.
I always wonder how books get out there. How do you advertise a book?
Well, some of it I think has to do with the notoriety of the author. So, like, this is his last book. So,
well, like, you always hear of these breakthrough authors. Are those just, like, secret agents from the New York Times? Like,
yeah, because, well, it almost seems like everyone makes the bestseller list. So, I don't know how the book industry works.
How can there be 92 bestsellers at once? There has to be one bestseller.
Yeah.
You know, if you're using the legal term best.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my critique of the New York Times.
I 100% agree. I don't know how the book industry seems a little off. But, yeah, Walter Tevis, I didn't know this, but he actually wrote a book called The Queen's Gambit.
Gambit?
Gambit.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't
Gambit is what Freddie says from the show Freddie from Nickelodeon.
Oh, really? Yeah, The Queen's Gambit, which was turned into a very popular Netflix show. So apparently good at writing books kind of about sports, but sports that aren't they're not like football and baseball and basketball.
You mean not sports? Is this a sport?
We're really stretching the limits of a sport.
I know, like, it's considered like a sport, billiards, pool, whatever.
But it's not like a physical sport. But it's also not exactly a mental sport. But it's more so a mental sport. It's more like golf. It's about precision.
Okay, fair. In my head, it's a stretch to say billiards is it.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you. But
okay. I don't know.
What would you call it then? An activity? Is chess an activity? Chess is definitely not a sport. It's more like a game.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with there being competitive game matches. I just want another category.
Yeah, I feel like there's not a word that defines things like table tennis is in the Olympics. Should that really be considered a sport? Of course, breakdancing was in the Olympics this year, so I don't really know what.
Yeah, they had flossing and breathing in the Olympics this year.
So I don't know what it is required of anything of being a sport anymore. The definitions keep changing.
Once they add
so
breastfeeding
much
to the Olympics, I'm not watching the Olympics anymore.
Yeah. Hopefully that won't
Would you
happen.
agree?
I would agree that that's probably.
Is that where we draw the line here at the movie?
To draw the line.
Good.
Yeah, we've made it. We've taken a stand.
Good.
We will not stand for that.
Or birthing. That would be another horrible sport. Just birthing in general.
Yeah, that would be odd.
Yep.
So this
9.5 out of 10.
This movie stars Paul Newman as Fast Eddie once again. He's washed up. He's kind of a bourbon bootlegger of sorts, where he sells women who run bars.
He sells to women.
He sells to women at bars.
You left out the word "to." So
Okay, very important.
yes.
That he kind of is like, I'll sell you this bourbon in this bottle. It's a cheaper bourbon in a more expensive bottle. So it's a type of bootlegging. So he's kind of a con artist, but he gets other people in on the con. And he happens to run into a young man named Vincent, who's very good at 9-ball, but he is too good. Because the whole thing about pool and billiards, which are the same thing, I mean, is that you have to get people to play you for money. That's why people want to play. They want to play because they like playing, but they also want to play for money. But if they already know that you're really good and they don't think they have a chance of beating you, they don't want to just throw away their money. So clearly there's a disconnect between the reality and the world that Vincent is living in. He wants to live in a world where it's more like, I don't know, other professional sports where you just get paid for being the best. But that's not the world that is pool. And it's not the world that's pool halls. But and he has a girlfriend named Carmen who's a little bit from a rougher background, we find out, than Vincent. But and he's kind of like a good guy, a good stand-up guy. He actually works at Child World, a toy store.
Yeah.
And he has a great shirt that says his name on it. And Eddie is like, I need to recruit this guy, and we'll do a little bit of a cut, kind of a la what the person from The Hustler, I can't remember his name, did with him. It might have been a more favorable.
Bert?
Yeah, Bert. Bert from The Hustler.
Yeah.
Might have been a little bit more favorable of a business deal, 60-40 versus like 80-20 or whatever.
Yeah.
Bert had Fast Eddie on, and he's like, we'll get some games in the underground, and we'll practice, and I'll show you how to hustle, and then we'll get to Atlantic City and we'll win the tournament, and this will be great. So they kind of go back and forth, and once he gets the Balabushka cue stick, which is apparently a very rare pool stick, must be a custom designer who is famous. There's probably some like actual history, a Russian-born billiards cue maker. He crafted 12,000 cues in his 16-year period. So that means there's only 12,000 in anywhere. So it'd be very rare. He's a real guy.
Or 1,200.
1,200.
Yeah.
That I totally saw 1,200 and said 12,000. 1,200. That's why I was trying to convince everyone that 12,000. 12,000 might still be a small amount, but 1,200 is a very small amount.
It's a low number. I promise.
So he has this Balabushka, and there's a couple. It takes Vincent a while to get in his head that he has to lose because he keeps kind of messing it up. And then he gets mad about things like Eddie and Carmen, who Carmen's a whole nother story, but Carmen has a role to play in this whole operation, and part of it is that they pull these different schemes, and one of them involves Eddie being very handsy with Carmen, and it works out, but Vincent's very mad about it, and Carmen and Eddie try to reassure him that it's all acting. And then it starts to get better, but eventually there's a scene where Eddie takes his hand at playing pool again, and he gets hustled. And then he's mad. He can't take that. He's lost his edge, and because this is the hustle king, he should know when somebody's hustling him. Yeah. And this was a young Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah,
who was in this role.
Great, he did awesome.
And he was like, "Hey Eddie, you think I need to lose some weight?" I was like, "It's a great line." And so because of that, he's dejected, and he gives Eddie and or I keep getting Eddie and Vincent's names confused. Vincent and Carmen money so that they can continue on the road and meet in Atlantic City where he is going to play in the tournament. So in the tournament, it all kind of leads up to, at this point, Vincent's a pro. He's working the green rooms where people gamble after. He's running all these schemes with Carmen. They've learned from Eddie, and it culminates in a moment where Eddie and Vincent face off, and Eddie wins, and he's very happy that he won, and his lovely girlfriend from the bar, or I don't even know what their situation is. Janelle, she comes into town. Everything's looking great. And then lo and behold, Carmen and Vincent show up at the door. Oh, yeah, I dumped the game. Here's your cut of the winnings.
Yeah.
And Eddie is furious. He's furious because you realize that he's kind of putting on a facade the whole movie, and he really wants to be the best. Like, he hasn't lost that from The Hustler.
Yeah.
And now Vincent has kind of pulled the rug out from under him and said, no, I learned how to hustle. And again, he's hustled for the second time almost, even though he's getting the money.
Yeah.
He was hustled. And so then he drops out of the tournament, very, like, obviously gives Vincent the money back.
Yeah.
And then he's trying to challenge him to play. He challenges him to play for real. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any money involved in this game. It's just like, let's see who's the best. Mm-hmm. And then what's the final line? Is it like, I'm back?
Yeah. Well, the money on the line was the $8,000 in the envelope.
Okay, so they're playing for the full earnings, or for Eddie's half of the earnings.
Yeah.
Or Eddie's 60% of the earnings, or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
So they're playing for that, and then he says, I'm back. And it was kind of up to our imagination what happens after that.
Yeah. Why did it end that way? Just get right to it.
It's interesting because I was starting to read some theories on this, and because also, I didn't really mention this, but Vincent was pretty upset at Eddie because he's like, you taught me all of this. We get to this tournament, and you said, it's other than the line I said at the beginning, money won is twice as sweet as money earned.
Yeah.
So he gives him this whole like lecture on how it's all about money. It's all about winning money. It's not about pool. Mm-hmm. And then you get to Atlantic City, and all of a sudden they're successful. It's a lot of money, and there's more money to be won in the green rooms. Yep. And he says, like, I didn't want to dump the game. Like, part of me didn't want to dump the game, but I realized, like, there's more earning potential here if I do this. Mm-hmm. So if it's all about money, then I'm doing the right thing here. Yeah. And then all of a sudden Eddie's mad at him. So he's like, you used us to, like, you were going to get here and then beat me, and then you were going to ride off in the sunset as finally getting your moment, and you were just using us. Yeah. And Eddie's like, well, Vincent, like, you would have just been back in the hometown bar playing 9-ball with nobody if it wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think he even admits, he's like, yes, I used you, but you're still ahead. But that's not a satisfying answer to Vincent.
It's an interesting thing. It's, I think the review that I had was, you can have money or you can have the game, and you can't have both. Yeah. And in this, it kind of shows like the progression of Eddie is definitely just this shady, shifty dealer that just wants to earn money at the beginning of the film. Then he realizes he's kind of like, there's a point when he loses to that guy. I forget his character's name, and he Amos, and his ego gets destroyed. And then after that, he realizes like, oh, my pursuit of money, my pursuit of being a good hustler has actually cost me my love of pool and my love of billiards. So he goes on this journey to kind of regain that back. And then by the time he regains it back, his protege has pretty much gone the opposite way and gone into the hustling game. So then when they meet again in Atlantic City, by the way, I've been to those exact boardwalks they were at. They're in opposite places of where they were at the beginning of the film. And they've kind of convinced each other of their ideologies, maybe, and adapted to that. And then now they're different characters. And then Eddie is probably going to win, I think, the end of the game, or the end of the movie game, because his love for pool is there. And it seems like whoever has that love for pool is honestly better. Because Eddie gets his mojo back when he loves pool again. He lost it when he hated, when he got sick of it, and it was just for, a cash grab. So.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely an interesting ending. I like it's left a little bit ambiguous. I don't know if that's how the book ends or that was a flourish that Scorsese put on it. But the characters flipping is not a way that I necessarily thought of it, but it definitely seems like that's what happened. Mm-hmm. Like it took a long time to get out of Vincent's head. Like you can't be this showy. You gotta, if you're gonna be showy, it has to be for a purpose. It has to be for an end goal. You can't just be showy for showy's sake. You can't just be good for being good's sake.
Yeah.
It actually reminds me of a lot of different things. I was just thinking about musicians. A lot of times musicians are accused of like selling out. Mm-hmm. It's very rare that you're a musician who is hugely commercially successful and you were never accused of ever like making an album with mostly just profits in mind, right? You could have had an album. You couldn't have had an album that was successful and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to make 5 albums that are like that album because I know that's safe and that's what people want to hear, and not really expand my sound. Like I think of bands like Led Zeppelin as being exceptions because they continued to do different things.
Yeah.
And maybe they were they were helped by an era that rewarded experimentation a bit more.
Yeah.
Than people do now.
Maybe.
And maybe sometimes as a listener, we have sort of our own view of what experimentation should look like that the artist doesn't have. And we're holding them to an unfair standard.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that these artists are necessarily wrong for making these decisions. I'm just saying that people accuse them of these things.
Yeah.
Or for going on for too long. Like kind of like the Rolling Stones are still touring.
Are they really?
They were like a couple years ago.
Wow.
So, and they're like pushing 80, if not 80. And you're like, do you need to still be touring? But there's still a market.
Well, it's so not I guess art, you can't. It's about legacy. And...
Yeah. Then it becomes about a different thing. And you're like, well, they earned it. You know, they had
it's what they enjoy
multiple
too.
Decades of albums and things that people remember and want to go see. So the legacy thing makes sense too. Maybe they're not that. I can think of like bands that have been like, oh, why didn't they just,
You always find a way to bring in your bands into every episode.
Okay, I'll tell you about a personal experience I had with this. So a couple weeks ago, I went to the Reynoldsburg Tomato Festival, and there was a free concert. 2 bands that had hits in the 90s, Vertical Horizon and Sister Hazel. You're not going to probably have heard of either of those bands. They had massive hits, at least one massive hit in the 90s, each of them. Lots of people's in that age range then, like 40, 50-year-old people there. And the Vertical Horizon comes on. They're not bad, They're not the best band I've ever seen, but they're not bad. And they play some great covers from some bands that me and my friends like a lot, the Smiths and New Order and The Cure. Well, they didn't play a New Order cover. That would have been too good to be true. But and then they played their hit at the end and it was great. It was, I think, Everything You Want. And they had a couple other minor hits that also played pretty well. And then Sister Hazel comes on stage. I hate to say it, but that Sister Hazel show was one of the worst music performances I've seen in my life.
Uh-huh.
And it's sad. And it's mostly because, and this is not to drag on anyone. It's mostly because the lead singer, for whatever reason, I don't think his voice has held up to the standard that it was at. And he is, you can tell he's the pulse of the band still. Like they wouldn't have had their hits without this guy.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the zip anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of like a scenario like Eddie, he's lost his fastball.
Yeah.
And I feel bad because I'm kind of talking about a real person here. So I don't want to lose the empathy. But then I kind of realized like these people got big in their music in the 90s. They were probably in their early 20s. They were able to make a living and it kind of extended. And now this is what they can do. This is like their skill set.
Yeah, they have to keep going. They made a brand out of it and they made it into a business.
Yeah, and they have to keep going. Like they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And they both kind of, and the musician, like maybe it was just a bad day for their lead singer, and the rest of the band had, they were great musicians. So it's not all bad. and I appreciate the effort. It was a good effort.
All right, we get it. You're putting a positive spin on it.
I'm trying to because I truly feel somewhat bad for. I wasn't planning on making this example because I've kind of made it into a whole thing now.
I'm a little bit less concerned about that, but I see what you mean. And Fast Eddie's kind of in that situation where he's kind of lost it. He's
literally in tears.
He sees someone better than him. Even I think that's part of it too. He's realizing like the next generation of pool players are coming in, and he's kind of becoming irrelevant. And even just that, the culmination of that was when he lost to Amos. Mm-hmm. But I think there was some building to that as well, where he keeps getting annoyed. He's fighting with Vince. Sorry, I'm getting confused because you're getting confused now. He's fighting
Vince
with Vince
and
a
Eddie
lot.
Just very similar.
Yeah,
names,
kind
personalities.
Of. Yeah,
they're cut out of the same cloth.
A little bit.
I will say, the way that Vince views pool is much different than Fast Eddie viewed pool when he was getting big when he was young.
Why do you say that?
Pool was everything for Fast Eddie. I think Vince, he had to get talked into like this being his thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Eddie was right. He did not have a future at Child World, but for whatever reason, like playing video games, like he had other things. Mm-hmm. He had Carmen already established. She's a little maybe erratic, but not to the extent that Eddie's love interest in The Hustler is.
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially the way that she ended. But
so it's not exactly apples to apples.
No.
But the desire to be great at pool, I think, in its essence, is fairly similar.
Yeah, and I think that's even shown in this where Paul. I keep saying Paul. Eddie is still that same guy. He's still obsessed with completing a task, right? In the first film, it was he needs to be the best pool player, and in this, that carries over a little bit, right? He's mad that he has lost the hustling game. He has lost the ability to play someone, and be the best hustler out there, and I think it seems like the same ambition. It's not like any separate ambition. I think he's just always had it. And I don't know what exactly happened 25 years ago that he talks about. He's like, I lost it all. Was he referring to something that happened in The Hustler?
I wasn't sure that he was referring to that.
Okay, I didn't know if he was because he said,
he could have been.
He stepped out of the game after some tragic event 25 years ago.
Well, it
could have been obviously her, unaliving herself. But
maybe it was that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It could have been something else.
I looked it up, and there were like 3 different things that it said. But
yeah, I think they maybe left it intentionally vague for you to be like,
I don't know,
speculating.
If Scorsese always does that, but so he's been out of the game a while, and that same ambition is still there to be the best. And when he sees someone else who can be better than him, he kind of wants to be a part of it, right? Fast Eddie can't just stand still and let someone else be better than him and be on his own career. Fast Eddie wants to mentor this kid because he wants to be a part of it. He still wants to be a part of, the best of the best because he still has that same pride within him, that ego that's really fragile. And also, Vince has a very fragile ego as well. I would say they have that,
They definitely have that in common, yeah.
But you're right.
You can see that in his relationship with Carmen,
but
who's much more sure of herself than he is of himself.
For sure. But Fast Eddie was like, in the Hustler, he would stay up all night. He played Minnesota Fats like 16 times in a row, right? Something like that.
That was for the love of the game, you could tell.
It was for the love of the game. But
because he didn't want to quit.
He didn't want to quit because he was trying to destroy him, I think.
Yeah.
I think
it was all about the game.
Yeah, it was all about the game. And then in this, he's just a broken down man who's been through it all, who plays at this low-town, street-level bar pool, and that's where he kind of lays low because he's no longer big after the incident 25 years ago, and he no longer loves the game. He's just about the hustle. He's just about the money and the color of it. And I think once he meets Vince, he can kind of see that spark of like, oh, someone who loves the game again. Maybe I can be a part of that, especially since he's going to be way better than me one day. So I don't know if it was the same ambition as the Hustler, but I saw like a carrying over of and that's a really good thing to do because Paul Newman's much older in this film. Much older. I mean, this film came out 26 years later, and recapturing that character and it's still feeling like the same character is a really hard thing to do. So maybe this is a good transition into Paul Newman's acting. One final roundabout about it. What do you think
of his acting? Yeah. So one thing, I listened to re-listened to the Rewatchables episode, re-listenables. I'm gonna now review the most listenable Rewatchables episode because this one is actually a really good one. And the thing is, I didn't grow up in the era that this movie came out in, so I think some of the significance can be lost even as you're rewatching movies, just because you don't feel the era around it. So one of the things that Bill Simmons pointed out about this movie is that Pool was bigger. It was actually on ESPN because ESPN hadn't been bought by Disney. There wasn't all this stuff that has happened in the last 30 years. So people knew there was actually cameos of famous pool players in this movie.
Yeah.
I would not have known that because nobody knows who these people are.
Well, I saw that. I just didn't care to look any deeper because I didn't know who they were.
And the one thing that they mentioned that I also maybe would have thought of more subconsciously, but Newman intentionally cast himself in older parts. He wasn't even really that old. I don't know how old he was, but he started casting himself in older parts when he was 50. He wasn't old yet. He maybe could have still played young characters.
Yeah.
But he made a conscious decision to be I'm gonna age myself. I'm not gonna let Hollywood age me. I'm gonna start working on finding parts that are older. And I think Clint Eastwood followed this model. And he was a director, so he could really have a lot of control over how his characters are portrayed and their age and things. And it really opened up this avenue for actors to, follow this. And now he's no longer. I think his acting style really, the way that there's much more of an edge to this character than any other Paul Newman character we've seen. He seemed a lot more jaded, a lot more cynical. You didn't see as much of that smile.
Yeah.
It was a lot more frowns, lot more
no charm.
A lot more emotional. Yeah, less leading on the charm, more grizzled.
Mm-hmm.
On having gone through all these Paul Newman movies, I think I recognize that a lot more. And he's still undeniably cool. He's got the Cadillac. He's got the glasses.
Oh, those sunglasses were great. He looked like
he's got the mustache.
Yeah.
He's rocking every outfit he's in, and he speaks with an authority that you have to respect. And he has this kind of child care. He complains a bit more than his other characters. It's no longer this witty. It feels like you've grown up with Paul Newman. You can't live forever as the happy-go-lucky prisoner who is serving a sentence and trying to make a point. All these characters have been through tough situations, but the way that he handles himself now that he's older and is showing that he's weathered is so much different. And I think it just again shows that he studies a lot. He picks his parts well. He's looking for good acting partners. We just did 2 of them with Robert Redford, and now he's working with one of the rising stars in his time, Tom Cruise. I think was a great pairing for this movie. And he knows that he needs, it can't just be him. He needs a good cast around him to be in a good movie. Because I think he genuinely wanted to be in good movies.
Yeah.
Which is why he has so many memorable parts that we can go back to.
Yeah, for sure. And that just shows to his acting too, because in The Hustler, that's the beginning of his career, and this is near, towards the end of his career, aside from, maybe 15 more years. But to play the same character, but to have more depth to it, it really does show the evolution in his acting. We talked about how over the course of these we talked about over the course of the 4 movies previous to this, how he is more willing to take on supporting roles and step to the side, let the lead actor like Robert Redford or even Tom Cruise in this step forward and put the movie on their backs. But he still carries such great weight when he talks, like you said. And you said it's he's authoritative when he talks. And I think Paul Newman had to grow into that. The Paul Newman in The Hustler did not have weight to his voice. He kind of was this almost unlikable character. In this in this movie, he might be unlikable if you were to meet him, but he's likable because he's Paul Newman, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like he has become an actor that is likable no matter what role he plays. And most actors cannot get to that level because they're just they get lost in whatever.
Well, you can even look at Tom Cruise. Much like he made a decision to be young his entire career.
Yeah.
As much as he could.
Yeah.
To like continue on with being the action star. I mean, he didn't really start out as an action star. That kind of came later on from like in the 90s when he started doing like Mission Impossible. So even though this is like the start for Cruise towards the end for Newman. So you can almost see the differing ideologies as they move on from this movie.
Yeah, and they are in two different generations of movie actors. And I almost wonder like if that's just a generational difference where Paul Newman's just more comfortable looking old, where Tom Cruise still looks like he's 28, aside from some wrinkles and Scientology statements. But
yeah, and who knows how much the Scientology affects his desire to look young. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Although they don't believe in healthcare, so.
Oh, really?
No.
I haven't. I need to watch some YouTube videos.
Yeah, the one big thing that is known is that like they don't accept medical care of any kind.
So then how does he?
I kind of doubt that is somehow. I feel like Tom Cruise might get an exception because he's probably so high up because he's got so much money. And the other thing I know about Scientology is not much is known because I think they try to keep a lot secret, but I think it's kind of one of those religions, quote unquote, where the more you pay, the higher the level you get, the more influence you get by whoever is granting this influence. It's one of those kind of things. And they need Tom Cruise probably more than he needs them.
He's their poster child.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I could see that. So that plays into this. This was way before his Scientology. I know his Scientology is within the last couple decades. As far as I know, I think. Yeah,
they started talking about like I feel like early 2000s was when the Scientology stuff started coming out.
Yeah, and that's when it became popular, Ben. But no, I think I think so. There's just greater weight to his acting. There's greater depth to him, and just to play the same character and recapture, I think those are just like 3 all-star actor things that it's like a hat trick. So. How do you think Tom Cruise did?
I think he had a great performance. Probably not his best. I think my personal favorite in terms of his acting performance for Tom Cruise is Jerry Maguire.
Really?
I think he's really good in Jerry Maguire. Now, I'm sure you could find other movies where maybe his physical acting is better, but Jerry Maguire really matches no way. Although I can think of one more movie that actually, because he's not the star, his performance in Magnolia is really, really good. But he's also not the star of that movie, so it's only like a 20-minute scene that he's in. Yeah. And it's funny because he kind of plays like a motivational speaker, con artist, Scientology kind of guy who but it's a fantastic performance. So he definitely, and he's good in Minority Report. He's good in, I actually haven't watched many of the Mission Impossible movies, but I've heard his stunts are incredible. And he's good in Top Gun.
Yeah.
Whatever.
He's great in Top Gun.
He's great in Top Gun. He fits that role well.
He fits it fine, just fine. And fine is good. If a guy says it's fine, then it's actually good. That's what I've learned. So.
Yeah. So overall, I think he has a lot of charisma in this movie, and he almost like his Werewolves of London. Like there's scenes that are memorable that he does. Yeah. I think he's still learning, so it's not a perfect performance, but
yeah. And I don't know if he fully solidifies which lane he's in this film when it comes to like what specific character he's playing. Just I felt like he felt a little bipolar at times. Like a little bit over the top in his emotions, and his smiling was like, and his I don't know. He was very emotive. And it came off to me as a little bit over.
Sometimes that works in movies, like if you're over emotive.
But when you're contrasted to Paul Newman's character, I think it's a little bit.
But
their interactions were, ultra natural. I think it was just, They were great together. Is it, how would you say, this is a good question. I just came up with it then, Ben. I'm just like patting myself on the back for this. How is Robert Redford and Paul Newman's dynamic a little bit different than this dynamic?
I think their dynamic felt in both of the movies that they're in felt more like a team.
Okay.
And like now I will say I think the dynamic in The Sting is a little bit more similar to the dynamic in this movie, where it's the young guy and the old guy. Now in The Sting, Robert Redford's character goes to Paul Newman's character, whereas in this movie, Paul Newman's character finds
he's like desperate.
Tom Cruise, so it's a little bit different dynamic. But I think if we're bridging those two movies together, it kind of makes sense. Now there's a 13-year gap where he makes other movies, so and I think there's some famous movies in there too, not as famous, but famous.
Yeah, I mean,
and I think Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to me is Newman at his most charismatic and Redford at his most charismatic.
Yeah. So
I think that I've kind of maybe gained an appreciation for that movie as it might be that memorable because it is. Because I was thinking about it, I was like, Newman is Newman in The Hustler, but he hasn't developed his charisma as much. Yeah. Cool Hand Luke, he's super charismatic, but the movie is like has such a kind of a dark undertone. I think it leaves you remembering that a little bit more than you remember his charisma. Yeah. So Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is like
it's a buddy comedy.
The buddy comedy that is like, that's what attracts people to it.
Oh yeah.
And then The Sting has that, but then if you think about it, it's more about Redford's charisma. Yeah. Because Newman is a lot more in the shadows and not as charismatic. He's like purposely pulling back. Yeah. Because that's what his character's supposed to be like. Yeah. And then this movie, he's so grizzled. You're like, yeah, I love him. I think he's great and he's cool because he's Newman. But I'm not, I don't want to go hang out with this guy.
No.
Like you said.
I would say, Robert Redford and Paul Newman have a little bit better dynamic. Yeah. I felt like Tom Cruise and Paul Newman were still finding it. They were, Robert Redford and Paul Newman never really had to fight or argue that much in their they got in fights and they argued a little bit.
They never felt like real fights.
This is a little bit different because they were almost partners or like protege, master. But in this, it feels like father-son or like brat, brat son and ungrateful father, I guess.
Yeah, some sort of. There's other stuff going on.
It's a little bit more petty relationship. So it was just a little bit less enjoyable. I think it was still good. They bounced off each other very naturally. Both very talented actors, like A tier. Like Tom Cruise is the number one actor in the world, right? Ever.
Probably in terms of how much money he's made.
Yeah, and I think all of his films have probably crossed over $5 billion, which is crazy. And I think, like two A-list tier actors, like Paul Newman was probably the Tom Cruise of his time, and then Tom Cruise is the Tom Cruise of his time. And then now it's like, Timothy Chalamet?
I don't know. We're waiting for someone.
But then we need a Tom Cruise, Timothy Chalamet. But, I mean, to be fair, there has to be probably, if you're thinking about the age difference between Paul Newman and Tom Cruise, it kind of has to be a different dynamic because the age difference is there. Where Robert Redford is, older. He's older than Tom Cruise by a little bit. So, I mean, it's hard to compare to. They're just completely different characters, completely different movies. But Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is different because it's like, that's a movie that focuses on the characters less than developing the plot. And The Sting and Cool Hand Luke are very heavy on the plot, which make them, darker. So, what would you say was your favorite of these 5 films that we have done?
The funny thing? I think I gave every single one of these movies 4 stars.
Wow.
And I think one movie definitely deserves 4.5 stars in my mind. It's like settled.
Cool Hand Luke?
And that movie's Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah.
I think Cool Hand Luke is the best. It's definitely the best in terms of Newman's acting. Yeah. It gives him the most time, like we've talked about. And it feels like it has the most weight, even though the philosophy and what you can learn from the movie is not as clear, but
sure,
it feels like it really.
But that's not the point.
Yeah, that feels like it's really trying to drive home something, and you're supposed to discover it.
You're talking about like the scenes at the end.
Yeah, and like just the idea of him being like a rebel without a cause.
No, I think that's the whole point. The movie was structured in a way that actually represented the philosophy of the film, which was we're just gonna do this and see what happens.
Yeah, and the Sting is my favorite in terms of the plot, I think.
Yeah, I still don't know what this thing is
now,
about.
The Color of Money, I was thinking about the first time I watched this movie, and I loved the pool shots.
These shots were great. I'm surprised we haven't talked about those circular shots where it goes all the way around the table. Yeah. Those were great. They had some like close-up shots of the balls just hitting each other. Then there was like a montage of tons of them like hitting each other.
And you know who we haven't mentioned but one time on this? Martin Scorsese, one of the masters of filmmaking. Yeah. And that's why. And there's a reason for that, because this might legitimately be my least favorite Martin Scorsese movie.
Really?
Of all of the Martin Scorsese movies I've watched. No, wait, I take that back. Hugo is probably my least favorite.
Oh, Hugo's so good. Come on.
But Hugo is good. So here's the issue. Like, Martin Scorsese is so good that this is like an amazing movie, and I'm calling it like one of the worst. And I haven't seen like some of the ones that are known to be his worst films. Yeah. But he's incredible, and I think there's a lot of like the montage with the blues, like they mentioned that on the rewatchables. That's a thing that's in a lot of his movies. Oh yeah. So there's stuff, and apparently this is another thing they mentioned. Sorry, I feel like I'm just ripping them off, but it's interesting information, so I don't want to deprive our listener and make them go listen to that podcast if they don't want to. But apparently he came up with the idea for Goodfellas while he was filming this. Yeah. Like he read I don't think he even read the book. He just read the review of the book about Henry Hill and was like, oh, I gotta do this. So that aspect's cool too.
Yeah. But, I mean, the camera work, the style of the film, just the soundtrack, I mean, all of it made it just an aura that was really, like, you don't feel rushed in any scene. It was kind of just, like, a pretty chill is the word that comes to mind. And that's not a word that I use lightly. But every single scene was just so amazing. Just because of, like, especially the pool action shots and then the music playing in the background with Tom Cruise, like, dancing and smiling and doing those ninja moves with the pool stick.
Werewolves of London.
Yeah. I mean, that was just great and just excellent choices, and it really set the aura. And, yeah, I don't know. Soundtrack was 9 out of 10. It was great.
Yeah. Mood, aura. Yeah, it was
I don't know what other non-New Agey terms to use, you know?
But one thing that we do need to do is we have a little food review for everyone.
Yeah.
So we'll just let Zach and Ben take it away from here.
All right, go ahead.
It's food review time again on the Movie Vault. Today we are reviewing none other than Newman's own thin and crispy crust 4-cheese pizza. Zach, how are you feeling going into this food review?
How could there be 4 cheeses on a pizza?
Can you read off the cheeses? It's on there's a cheat sheet.
Where are they?
It's right below that.
Oh. Mozzarella, or is it mozzarella? Mozzarella. There's no T though. Cheddar. Parmesan.
I'm
just joking. And Asiago.
I was going to say Asiago.
I'm just joking. Yeah. So those are the 4 cheeses. And it's whole milk mozzarella. So
good to know. All right. You know the rules. 1 bite.
Is that the rule?
It's a little cold. We let it sit for a little bit. What?
It's delicious.
That's a food review. It is delicious. How does it compare to other frozen pizzas you've had?
Probably, I don't know. It depends on my mood. It's not necessarily like amazing.
Yeah, I have to agree. My issue too with frozen pizza, I went into Giant Eagle. This was supposed to be on sale, but I think I messed up and I was supposed to clip a coupon on the Giant Eagle app. That's just so much work. So you could save $2 on it, and I didn't. But it's $8.99 for a frozen pizza. I bet there are pizza places you could get a fresh made pizza for $8.99. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have to have a deal or something, but still.
Oh yeah, they have like $12.99 DiGiorno's with the stuffed crust. Yeah, I can't eat non-stuffed crust pizza.
Really? I didn't know that it was such a non-negotiable.
Well, you know the saying that redheads are high maintenance.
Well, yeah, that is. I can definitely say it's true.
Mm-hmm. It's academic, so I think this is an all right deal, I guess. Is Giant Eagle the one where you have to like sign up for their program to even go through their
checkout?
Self-checkout line?
Yes. Yeah,
that's evil.
I have it on the little. You can go stand in line with the regular peasants.
You know that's evil, right? And the thing is, you know what else is evil? When Starbucks makes you load a digital card with money, and you can't like use both the money and the overflow on your regular card, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. How is that legal? That has annoyed me. I didn't realize at first that was the case. So I'd just be like, oh, I'll load $10. Mm-hmm. You can't get it off the app.
No.
It's on there forever.
No. And then if you have like $2 left, you have to load the card. Like you can't just use $2 on something and spend the rest. Like if you were trying to buy something for $4.
Yeah, how is that legal?
You can't use the other $2 on your like
credit
card.
You can't.
So I don't know. I think it's evil. It's like
it's deceptive.
Yeah. It's deceptive.
I don't know. It's clear that Starbucks is marketing for rich people now who don't pay attention. Because they know if you can get an extra, basically you get extra like, because all the drinks are like $4 or $6, which means they're not even. So like say the drinks were like, all the drinks were $5. I'm sure you can get a drink for $5, but it's like $5.25. So then you have $4.75 left. You want another $5.25 drink, you got to reload. So they're getting an extra, 50 cents. And then every person who's doing that, they're getting an extra 50 cents.
Yeah.
So it's basically like somebody skimming your credit card.
PNC did this for me too. So I got a donation for something that I do, and the person who wrote the donation put like the name of the thing that I run, like the event that I run, rather than my name. And I didn't even look at it. And this is my own fault. Like I pulled a Catch Me If You Can, and I tried to do the digital wallet thing and like deposit it, and it was for $1,000. And this was 2.5 years ago. I still to this day have not gotten that $1,000 back because it's been in review, and they do 6-month review periods, and it's been in review for the 5th time now, just to see like if it was legitimate check. And after 3 years, PNC gets to keep it.
So they just keep you in review forever.
Yes. Isn't that despicable?
That is despicable.
That's horrible. So I've lost $1,000, and this poor person who donated it is like wondering where it all went. And I called, I had to prove that I wasn't stealing and embezzling the money myself. And anyway, I'm switching to a financial credit union that my now fiance is at. So I'm going to ask her to kind of switch me over. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, hopefully that's better.
Yeah.
Anyway, as far as the pizza goes, like a good 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree.
In the grand scheme of pizza.
I would like to see some other flavors. I don't think 4 cheese pizza is going to be good anywhere.
Maybe it was a bad decision on my part.
No, it's not bad.
Maybe I should have gone the margarita route.
No, because margarita is hard to judge against other. This is probably a good standard. It's probably not going to go up too much if you switch flavors. Let me read what Paul Newman actually does. I think in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or was it...
It was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. We last did a food review.
Yeah, and we reviewed his pasta sauce, and we reviewed his garlic and basil or whatever pasta sauce, and it was great. It was good. But I remember asking the question, what does this money actually go to? And let me read you the story of Sophie.
I'm all ears.
She is on the back of the pizza box. The title of the article is A Camp Where Everyone Belongs. Meet Sophie. When a 10-year-old Sophie first learned about serious fun camps, she couldn't wait to go. I begged and begged. And when we left, I was so sad because camp was the coolest thing I'd ever done. Sophie, who's a teenager now, has juvenile arthritis, which sounds horrible, like we talked about. It doesn't say that in the article, but she does have juvenile arthritis. Some days it can be so painful she can't get out of bed. Serious fun camps are made for kids like Sophie. And then there talks about a bunch of other experiences she had. But basically, Serious Fun Children's Network, founded by Paul Newman, is this network that it's like Make-A-Wish but B tier. They give you fun experiences when you have a chronic illness.
This makes it expand out in my mind. I thought it was like the same thing, but it's more like maybe for chronic illnesses, things that. And that's cool. That's cool that he provides those experiences. And I guess I didn't realize like it's the camp aspect. So that's like one of the things the money goes to. And supposedly they don't turn a profit on this. All of it.
Supposedly.
Well, I mean, they have to put money back into the company, obviously. But then anything on top of that goes to the camps.
But I wonder how much like.
Well, they have to get
bureaucracy they have.
How much does the CEO make, do you think, of Newman's Zone?
I guarantee you it's over 200.
Over 200. Yeah, it's got to be at least.
Probably 300. 400. Maybe 5.
Possibly. Mm-hmm. I was a little bit unsure whether they would have this in the store. I don't go to the frozen pizza section that often. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of like, is this a more obscure brand? But no, it's right there. Right front and center.
And you don't notice it until you know Paul Newman.
Yeah. And they definitely changed the logo to Newman's Zone. It's a good logo, though, from when I was a kid, which, granted, was like, could have been as long as like 14 years ago that I'm thinking.
It's like AI generated.
Yeah. It's like, make Paul Newman if he was on the front of a pizza box. Boom.
I wonder if their phrase 100% profits to help kids could be like legally manipulated to be like, yeah, we put money towards things. They technically are for kids, but it's like the CEO's $1 million salary puts food on the table for his kids, you know?
Well, yeah, I don't know. That is possible that they could do that.
I don't want to be like that skeptical, though. I think that's my bent. And of course, I am skeptic of everything.
We're a bit skeptical on the movie vault. We'll admit it.
Maybe just a little bit.
We'll admit it. All right. Well,
back to the episode. Enjoy.
Thank you for listening to our food review.
And
Zach and Ben, such talented food reviewers. They just have a way with words.
Have you ever broken a billiard ball?
I can't say that I have, but I've probably come close.
Did you ever have insurance on that billiard ball?
Never have had insurance on the billiard ball.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, did you know that you can insure other things besides your billiard ball? Like if you accidentally break your house, car, or auto? Wait, I already said
And car. What would be inside of your house? The pool table.
In the billiard balls.
Or it could be in your car, theoretically.
Or in, what's the other insurance that they do?
They do life.
It could be in your life.
Yeah. So, wait, Zach, how do I contact somebody and who do I contact?
Well, let's go to the how first. You go on your telephone and you type in 614-486-7300.
614-486-7300.
And you just ring, and then this guy will answer. He'll be like, "Hello?" And you'll be like, "Who's this?" He'll be like, "This is Jonathan. This is Jonathan Anglin." And we'll be like, "Who's Jonathan Anglin?" He'll be like, "Oh, this is Hedman Anglin Agency. You're supposed to. You don't know who you're calling?" And we'll be like, "No, Ben and Zach said on the podcast to call this number if my house tears in half." "Well, it's a little too late to get insurance if your house already tore in half, but I can help you for next time." So that's how it would go. Yeah. But that's Hedman Anglin Agency. And they
614-486-7300.
They can do your bidding for you.
614-486-7300.
We should come up with their official catchphrase. Do they have a catchphrase?
They might have a catchphrase.
Have we never used it in 120-something episodes or whatever?
Well, their little tagline on the website is Hedman Anglin Agency is here to secure your present and ensure your future.
Here to secure your present
and it's ensure your future. So it's not insure, but it's kind of implying the idea of insurance because they're insuring.
Oh, are you sure he meant that?
Maybe I misunderstood.
I'm not sure,
but that's what I'm getting.
Protecting.
So yes, personal insurance, life insurance, everything you need. Go support your independent agency. And if you're thinking business insurance, they got municipality insurance, commercial property insurance, business auto insurance, vacant building insurance, and church insurance.
Church insurance?
So all your churches out there. And don't stop at your car. They have RVs, off-roading vehicles, like and then ATVs? Umbrella insurances that can cover all of these things in one package.
Like my umbrellas?
Or maybe your umbrellas.
Is there child insurance?
I think that would kind of be under life insurance.
But like,
or health insurance.
Can a 3-year-old have life insurance for the expected earnings of a lifetime?
Probably not. Well, no, probably not.
I mean, you never want to talk about child dying, but if anything were to happen,
and they could have potentially earned.
Could you convince the insurance agencies or the IRS that your child would have been a billionaire?
Yeah, if you were really good and you got them to sign on to it,
you could say he had these genetics, he had this gene that would make him a genius, IQ 175, and I want to insure Bill Gates. And then they owe you that money. What if when you were born, you were genetically tested, and then they defined your net worth based off of and what job you had based off your genetics?
That would be insane.
That's your response to it? Okay. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
So call Hedman England Agency for anything that you have, since Ben didn't want to, go down my rabbit trail.
I cut it off there.
That's all right. So, the ending of the film, where Fast Eddie is saying that he got it back, what does that imply about the theme of the film, and what other evidences would you have for what you think the theme of the film is?
So, are you asking, is the movie about Fast Eddie getting it back, like becoming a pool player again?
Pretty much.
Are we being fooled? Are we being duped as the viewer, thinking it's about Vincent?
Maybe. I don't know if anybody was. Well, there probably were some that got duped. I was not duped. I'm asking.
I wasn't really duped, but I've also seen the movie, so maybe I was duped the first time.
Yeah, maybe. It's hard to remember the first time.
But I also don't remember having strong feelings about the ending the first time I watched it, because I was so enamored by the pool playing. That's all I really cared about.
Yeah.
I wanted to play. I mean, I've played pool by myself. We had a pool table at Otterbein where I went to school, and I would go over there. There was a summer I worked at a place nearby, and I would for my lunch break, it was kind of a long lunch break, so I'd go over and I'd eat my lunch and I'd play pool by myself, all influenced by The Color of Money. Wow. I owe it all to that show. I don't know how actually good I got, because you're playing yourself, so it's really hard to tell. And then I would play against someone else and I'd start getting in my head, and I wouldn't be able to make the same shots that I made. So you realize how mental pool is.
But really, also, you were hustling them.
And also, when you're playing yourself, you're kind of you win either way. So even though you're playing both people, but it's not real. It's totally different when you're playing against another person that you don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense, Ben. That makes sense.
But the ending is a little odd. Some of it comes down to that debate about what Vincent was so upset about, what Eddie was so upset about, and why Eddie had this sudden. I guess we really have to believe in that. What happened with Amos was just unlock something in his really cold, dead heart.
Now I had I found a theory though about that the Amos thing was a con, where Eddie was doing a con.
Oh, so it's a long con, kind of like the Sting.
A little bit like the Sting. I don't believe that theory, but the theory proposed was that Fast Eddie was, just doing that in front of Carmen and Vince, so that he could play the long game and get them to, join into these leagues and then make their way up into the Atlantic City competition. And then he would dupe them out of money, and then in the last minute he decides he doesn't want to do it because, he gets played as this bad character in front of Vince and Carmen, and then he creates Vince into this hustling machine. So then when they are in the tournament, he knows that the only person that can beat him is gonna forfeit it, basically lose it just for money, because he's convincing him that there's more money in that, and then Fast Eddie can win the whole thing. So that was a theory that I had. The only thing that doesn't make sense to that is that Fast Eddie genuinely wants to love the game, And it seemed like when Amos was hustling him, that actually affected him. Now, whether or not Fast Eddie knew that Vince was watching him in that one scene where he's crying, I don't really know. But Fast Eddie, his actions wouldn't make any sense. Why would he give up all of this money just to play the game? Why would he give his $8,000 back? Why would he forfeit, the top prize money just to love the game again? It seems like nobody came out with anything. They both pretty much went broke because they're just fighting and arguing and, going back and forth between hustling and playing the game. And at the end, I feel like there was just pure joy between the two because two men are going to play pool. And one of them is going to win. And it's probably going to be Eddie, I think. But that's just my guess. So I think the theme is what I said in my review, which is you can love the game or you can love the hustle, but you cannot have both. And I think Scorsese really hammered that home. What does this Student Doctor Network person have to say? I'm just joking. That's what the forums.
Yeah,
for
the
Student
forums.
Doctor Network.
Anytime I have a question about something, I like to go to the forums because I found out that there are forums about like really ultra specific things.
Oh yeah.
Not just Reddit. Like you could go to Reddit and there's specific forums and things on there, but like I have a Toyota RAV4. If I haven't mentioned that, proud owner. And there was something wrong with it, and I was trying to figure it out. And there's a specific Toyota RAV4 forum you can go to where people own Toyota RAV4s. They have their usernames like Bob 2010 RAV4, and they talk about different things about like what you should try.
Have you like posited any information on this?
I have not.
Okay.
Participated. I don't have a whole lot to contribute.
Except for that.
At any rate, this person's arguing, John Barton, that basically kind of along the lines of what we've been saying, that Eddie hustled Vincent Carmen.
Man, take some Claritin.
Yeah, I need to. Eddie hustled Vincent Carmen. Then along the way, he basically turned Vince into a better hustler than he intended to, and had this moment where he was like, I'm out. And then he got hustled and he was mad, and now he wants to play for the purity of the game. So that's like the theory that everyone thinks.
So his epiphany was at the end. It was not after Amos beat him.
It was kind of like, yeah, maybe
like his epiphany was at the end when he realized he was being hustled and he created a monster.
Like maybe he had an emotional reaction when Amos beat him, and then he had a like full realization.
But I'm saying if Amos beating him was a hustle, if that was fake, and he really did create this monster that kind of overpowered him by forfeiting the game and getting the gambled money, then his epiphany would be at the end when he realizes that Vince staged his losing of the game.
Yeah.
And that's when he learns, and that's when he's like, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to actually... Because there's a good, like, 30 seconds of music playing, zooming in on his face. He's about to make a decision. He's about to hit. Then he just stops. And it's like, maybe his epiphany was there. But I think his epiphany was actually when Amos beat him, because it's just tough to know, because it could go either way now that I think of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a definite... maybe you if you really thought about it and... dug into the movie and watched specific scenes over and over again, you could make a more compelling argument for one or the other, judging based on nonverbal cues and different things. And like really studying the characters, this would be way more in depth than you probably ever need to go with the movie. But if you tried to study the characters to see whether you could see how they act when they're like putting on a con versus their actual emotional reactions, and maybe we simply don't have enough screen time to be able to determine that.
Yeah, maybe
like
not.
With the characters. Like, because I do see the argument. So feasibly, could Eddie still be trying to con Vince at the end? Is that one of the arguments that you heard?
It was. It's just hard to say. I think Eddie had some kind of epiphany. It seemed like he actually changed and became in love with the game again.
He had that big spiel about being an actor. And I was like, so you could say he acted the entire movie.
Yeah, but... There's a whole montage where he's not with Vince, and it seems like he's actually trying to fall in love with the game again. He's
That's
doing these
true.
small time bets. Why would he do any of that if he's just conning Vince?
He's a really good con artist.
So
But none of that shows Vince.
Exactly. Vince isn't there,
yeah.
so why would Eddie? So I think there is this genuineness to Eddie.
Yeah, con artists usually aren't that. They're not like character actors.
No, they're not method actors.
They're not method actors.
So he why would he go to all these small town bets if he's not actually trying to fall in love with the game?
That doesn't make sense.
So I think he has an epiphany, whether it's with Amos or at the end in the finals. It beats me. I don't know. It's above my pay grade.
I do think the ending of this movie, I don't, like I said, I've thought about it a lot more this time around than I did the first time I watched it. So first time you watch it, just watching the camera whips and stuff are cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that that this is directed by Martin Scorsese. I believe the next year after this movie, he made The Last Temptation of Christ,
mm-hmm.
which is probably his most controversial movie.
Yeah.
And then he made Goodfellas in 1990. So that was pretty soon after this. And Tom Cruise would become more popular after this. So Paul Newman's really the only one who doesn't become more popular after The Color of Money.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that Scorsese at this point in his career, after he had made Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, and Raging Bull, which I feel like most directors would be really happy with just having made those three movies in their career.
Sure.
He was still making movies. I can't imagine this movie was a movie that he was like, this is one of my goals.
Yeah.
To create this movie, because it was written by somebody else, and Newman also had a heavy influence on the film, having been involved in The Hustler.
Mm-hmm.
They even tried to get Jackie Gleason in the movie as Minnesota Fats, but I think it was just kind of a mutual Jackie Gleason didn't think Minnesota Fats was a significant part of the movie as he should have been, and I think at this point Jackie Gleason would have been pretty old, so I don't know how that would have. Might have looked really out of place, because there's really not. I think they nailed that. There's not a whole lot of influence from The Hustler.
Yeah.
I feel like if they would have made this nowadays, say in 1999 they made The Hustler, and then 2024 they're like, we're making the sequel. There would have been just so many homages and callbacks, and it would have been insufferable. There would have been
one comedic character that's super annoying.
Yeah, it would. People don't know how to do this anymore.
Sure, yeah.
And it's probably because we don't have enough Scorseses in the world. They also probably would just reboot The Hustler and not do a sequel. But this was a unique circumstance because there was a book that came out that was the sequel.
Aside from the problems we have in modern cinema.
Yeah. I
think you're right, yeah. So... yeah, do you have any final thoughts on the film, Ben, before we wrap up here?
It's a fitting way. It's truly a fitting way to end this arc.
Okay.
It shows Newman kind of where he would end his career at.
Yeah.
He still worked for maybe 20 years because Cars came out in 2006. He died soon after that.
Okay.
So he worked for another, or is that 30 years? No, that's 20 years.
Yeah.
That is 20 years.
Yeah.
It's getting a little late. I'm struggling with math a little bit.
Yeah.
And we started with The Hustler, and we ended with the sequel, The Color of Money. So that's fitting. And
now we move on to the next arc.
We move on.
Yeah.
Should we announce it?
Well, yeah, we have to.
So the next arc.
You made it up, right?
I made it up. And I didn't come up. Well, I'm satisfied with the name because I think it accurately describes this arc.
Mm-hmm.
So, our next arc will be the Struggling Men arc. This is an arc, and it doesn't try to do anything fancy. It is simply about the genre of movies where we witness men struggle with different things. So, our next episode, we are excited to announce. We have not confirmed a recording date, but we will do this one next. So whenever that is, will be when it comes out.
Trolls 2.
Unless we make an executive decision to do them out of order. This will be Seamus Strapp coming on to do The Whale with us, which is a man who struggles with many things, including an eating disorder. He struggles with his relationship with his daughter. It's a heartbreaking movie. Darren Aronofsky. So that'll be the next movie. And then, because I decided to do it this way, we're going to do it in reverse chronological order, because we did this one in order by years. So I'm going to go backwards.
Okay.
We're going to go backwards. Oh, except for we have two movies in 1995, so I have to figure out which came out first. I didn't think about that.
And if they come out on the same day, just do alphabetical.
Yeah, that would be hilarious if they came out on the same day.
Yeah.
Let me do some quick math here. Okay, I know which one came out first now.
We'll wait for
the next ones. We'll tease with The Whale and just know that each movie, it's going to be they're going to be different. Some of them will be darker than others, but they're all going to be about men struggling with things. Mm-hmm. And specifically men, not people, men. So Zach and I are both men now.
I guess.
Yeah.
I am.
I don't always feel like a man. Like as compared to a boy.
I'm just still suffering from the after effects of childhood. So
yeah, so, but it's exciting. There'll be a lot of heavy thematic elements in these upcoming episodes. So, just keep that in mind. Not that there haven't been heavy thematic elements in the Paul Newman series, but there will definitely be some very heavy stuff. These next ones.
So, do you have any movie highlights?
I have 4.
Wow, I have 0.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I watched Dario Argento's Inferno. Great. Lots of similar tropes to his other movies. He's fascinated with sort of the fantastical, the demonic, that sort of thing. He has a great... I think he does kills great. He doesn't always do a lot, but he does them well. Builds suspense. This movie was a little bit harder to follow in terms of the protagonists and stuff, but it did have a satisfying ending, and the soundtrack is killer and on point as always. I watched Brian De Palma's Blowout with John Travolta. It's actually a bit of a cheesy movie in my opinion, but the final act is incredible. So I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would. It's about a sound guy for B movies who gets caught up in a political conspiracy. Then I watched John Borman's Point Blank. I didn't like it nearly as much as other people on Letterboxd seemed to like it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was an interesting noir action movie from the late 60s. I just found the characters to be a bit dry and unlikable. Yeah. And that was kind of my issue with it. I do think the filmmaking style was really good. Oh, I counted The Color of Money. That doesn't really count. So I guess I have 3. Those are my movies. So I kind of Blowout and Point Blank were kind of in the same vein. But really, I've really been enjoying watching movies on Tubi.
Okay. Of
all things, I really think Tubi actually has a great catalog of movies. If you can sort through it does have a lot of bad movies, like objectively speaking, on it. But if you can sort through those and you kind of know what you're looking for, there's actually quite a few really, really good movies on Tubi, and it's completely free. So I'm, if you are on a tight budget, and you could definitely easily take a year and go through tons of movies on Tubi. Yeah. You just have to deal with the ads. And if you can do that, you're fine. Yeah. So
I can't. I'm high maintenance. So, all right. Well, would you like to close the vault, Ben? It's been fun.
I would love to. It has been fun.
It's been a good arc.
It's been a good arc.
And our real life story arcs have been going well too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's in fact a big announcement in Zach's life.
Oh, I thought you were about to say in your life, and you were going to tell me I was pregnant. I was like, what?
No, but Zach is now an engaged man.
That's true.
If I was really on top of the ball game, I would have mentioned that at the start of the episode. But I was so excited about saying that movie line that we kind of got straight into the episode.
Yeah, and that's all right. I mean, other holidays get in the way, and it overshadows my engagement. Yeah. No, I'm just joking. I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't feel any different. It's like when you turn 18, you feel the same. When you bar mitzvah, you feel the same. It's just like.
It's like a change, but it takes, time for all the change to like settle.
Yeah.
And you have
another day, another dollar.
Times.
Or as SpongeBob would say, another day, another nickel.
And you still got medical school, still plugging along. So.
Oh my goodness, yes. Very much.
All right.
Close the vault. Go ahead.
I'll close the vault. Newman